Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose coming to you from our digital desk here at 19 News. We have some breaking news on that plane crash that happened last Wednesday in Geauga County. You'll remember it was a plane that was having engine problems, tried to make an emergency landing, but because of the engine failure, that plane slid off the end of the runway, ended up in a field on the backside of this airport. Now, what was interesting at the time is we had been told that there were four federal prison agents on board who were transporting an inmate. The question became, who was the inmate aboard that plane? We now have that answer. This is going to be disturbing for a lot of people to hear some of the details surrounding this inmate. Let's be sure to tell you that no one on the plane was injured. That included the pilot. There were four agents, federal prison agents, and then the one inmate. Nobody was injured in this. They all walked away. And the inmate was never in any ability to escape. He was still being monitored by those four agents. They were able to take them to an undisclosed location when the highway patrol arrived. But we do know now that the name of the inmate, and this is because we have the initial report from the Ohio State Highway Patrol, the inmate was a Carl Jaspers. And so, of course, our team here started researching exactly who Carl Jaspers was, and it didn't take us long to find a press release from the U.S. Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office out of the Southern District of Florida. This is a man who was convicted, actually pleaded guilty down in Florida in the West Palm Beach court. He was sentenced to 120 months for possession of child sexual abuse material. From what we know, between 2020 and 2021, Carl Lee Jaspers, age 67 years of age, had the screen name of Dandy Daddy and was using some sort of mobile application to communicate with individuals about child sex abuse material for trade. He was found to be in possession of more than 4,000 images and videos of child pornography. That's so again, to recap the breaking news, we now know the name of the federal inmate who was aboard that plane crash in Geauga County last week. He is a Florida man who was sentenced to 102 months in prison for possession and trading of child pornography. Again, he was never in any danger of escaping after this plane crash landed off the end of the runway. But again, one question we don't have answered, and this is a little bit new information. When the pilot was interviewed by the Ohio State Highway Patrol at the scene, the pilot informed the first trooper that arrived that they had taken off from Youngstown with that first inmate, Carl Jaspers, and that they were actually flying to Detroit to pick up a second inmate. Now that's where the report from the Ohio State Patrol stops. They don't tell us who was the second inmate. They don't tell us why was Jaspers being taken from the Youngstown area to pick up a second inmate in the Michigan area. It doesn't say where they were being taken to after that, where the final destination was. We have asked those questions from the Federal Department of Federal Board of Prisons. We asked that information last week, who was the inmate, and they simply gave us the canned response of, for safety and security, we do not release the name of prisoners or their destination or why they are being transferred. But again, using public records request, we did get the initial report from the Ohio State Highway Patrol to find out that the inmate that was aboard was a convicted sex offender pleading guilty to those charges down in Florida, had been sentenced to 102 months. But why that inmate was being transferred from Youngstown, why they were headed to Detroit to pick up a second inmate, we don't know. And where were they headed after that? Going to continue to dig for answers on this. Of course, when we heard last week that there was an inmate on this plane. The question became who was it and where were they headed. So we've got at least the who it was at this point. We're going to continue to ask questions in all of this, where they were headed, and when we try and if we get those answers, we'll bring that to you here. If we have any other breaking news, we're going to bring it to you here on our digital properties. But for now, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a good afternoon.
19 News. First, fair, everywhere.